Today is Sunday, January 26, 2025. Happy New Year! In this episode, I'm going to talk about two things I'm going through right now. Recall that my egg donor passed her medical clearance in December 2024. What we're working through right now is the legal contract between me, the intended parent, and my egg donor. I'll also talk about a company called Progeny that provides insurance coverage for infertility, in my case, the IVF and surrogacy processes. Let's start with the egg donor contract. In order to protect both parties, the intended parent and the egg donor, you need a legal contract between them. So both sides hire an attorney who specializes in family law to represent them. In my case, since I'm the intended parent, I had to pay for my egg donor's attorney, which was a flat $500. I found a fixed price lawyer in Dallas to represent me for $750. The goal of this effort is to create a legally binding contract for the parties and spell out all the details of what each side is agreeing to, what happens when either party breaches the contract, and so on. As technical as it sounds, it's not really as enforceable as you might think. I mean, in mine, I have asked for financial compensation if my egg donor backs out after signing the agreement. But in order to get that, I would have to engage with an arbitration expert, and if that did not work, I'd have to take her to court. And the contract says that whomever loses the legal battle has to pay the attorney fees incurred by the winning side. I don't like working with lawyers after having gone through my divorce. They have this annoying habit of treating lay people like we understand what they are talking about. Mine sent me a first draft with basically 5 comments and said, review this and let me know if you have any questions. Really? How about instead you walk me through this page by page, explaining exactly what I'm agreeing to here, since I don't understand any of this. It's written in legalese, which most people don't understand. So we spent about 2 weeks going back and forth on specific items. The biggest point of contention was spelling out what happens if the IVF cycle is canceled. The other side, the egg donor agency, provided some boilerplate text they wanted in the contract, but it was really poorly written. When I ran it by my fertility clinic, it turns out that 2 of the 4 scenarios I spelled out had a probability of 0%. They were trying to say what happens if the doctor or I cancel the cycle midstream and the egg donor is forced to continue to egg retrieval. Well, they said they would never force an egg donor to complete the cycle, which means anything stipulated in the contract would never happen. In this case, they want the egg donor to keep all the eggs if I back out midstream. But since the clinic would never force her to continue to the retrieval, this would never happen, and she would never get all the eggs. It's really quite bizarre. I want to protect myself in the event she gets cold feet at some point, but I don't want to be so aggressive as to scare her away. They've had her for a few days now, and I expect it may take them a few weeks to review it and discuss it, just as it did us. Once we reach an agreement, we both sign the contract. That provides the needed legal clearance for my clinic to move forward and schedule the IVF cycle. At this point, I'm thinking early March 2025. Now onto the insurance. Since most insurance coverage does not cover anything in this process for a single gay man, I had planned to pay for all of this out of pocket. The only exception I found, as communicated to me by my tax people, is the cost of my medical clearance, which was about $2,000 last February. So I withdrew retirement money and paid my fertility clinic $27,300 for the IVF cycle. And then I'll have to pay somewhere between $3,000 and $6,000 for her drugs, plus $10,300 the egg donor agency for her travel expenses and other things. So that's essentially $43,600 just to get the eggs and make embryos. However, something interesting happened in December 2024, last month. I got a strange letter from Comcast NBC Universal saying I was eligible for medical benefits and had until January 12th to sign up. So I called them to inquire about it. They had no idea what triggered this, but I figured it out. I had worked 2 days on a new NBC show in November and December, and that was it. So since this plan was much better and much cheaper than the typical ACA plan that I buy on the exchange, I signed up. It's only $136 a month and has a super low $500 deductible and an annual out-of-pocket maximum of $1,725. Compare that to my ACA plan, which costs $1,000 a month, has a deductible of $6,000 and an annual out-of-pocket maximum of $8,000. Huge difference here. Long story short, after a few weeks, I discovered that this medical coverage includes Progeny, a fertility benefit. They will actually cover what they call 3 smart cycles. For me, that means 3 full IVF cycles, but only the fertility clinic part. That is still about $22,000 per cycle, which is amazing. On the surrogacy side, it's less generous. You can submit expenses up to $25,000 and get reimbursed, but it's fully taxable. As it turns out for me, so are the IVF benefits because they're not considered medically necessary by the government. But even with the taxes due, I stand to get $17,000 for the IVF cycle, which is no small change. Despite the taxation of these benefits, this is a huge win for me. It actually changes some of the financially driven decisions I had made earlier. One of my biggest fears is that my egg donor doesn't produce enough eggs for me. Recall that with co-fertility, she doesn't get financial compensation. Instead, she keeps half of the eggs. Well, I need enough eggs to make 6 good embryos, so I'm expecting 12 good eggs. If I don't get that, I'm stuck unless she agrees to do a second cycle. And since Progeny would pay for a good portion of this, it's now a viable option for me. I reached out and she is on board with this if the first cycle doesn't produce enough eggs. So a second cycle would cost me about $20,000 on the egg donor agency side and $5,000 for the fertility clinic for a total of $25,000. But that's a lot less than the normal cost and almost the full value of the benefit I'm getting from Progeny, which is some taxable number between $20,000 and $45,000. In the end, this was a serendipitous thing to happen, and I'm very fortunate that it did. So my goal is to maximize these fertility benefits as much as I can. The moral of the story is, if at all possible, research fertility benefits with companies and consider getting whatever job you can with them just for the purpose of having these benefits. If you visit the Men Having Babies website, they have a list of companies who provide fertility benefits, so that's a great starting point. Additional things I learned? Well, since I'd already paid my clinic $27,000 in December because at the time I had no insurance, I now have to wait up to 30 days for a refund, which may delay the start of my cycle. I need that expected refund money to fund other portions of the process. Or I can proceed with a credit balance at my clinic and get the refund later, but I still need to scrape up $13,000 from somewhere. The lesson here is to not pay for anything until the very last minute, just in case. I paid them in mid-December without having started the legal process and having no idea exactly when the IVF cycle would begin. So that was a mistake. Hope you learned something about the legal process of writing egg donor contracts and the benefits of having fertility insurance to cover some portion of your journey. I'll be back soon to report on additional progress. Hopefully, we complete the contract soon and can schedule the actual IVF cycle itself. Very exciting. Oh, since the egg donor contract has the donor's full name, I learned her last name for the first time. It's the same as Meghan's, the Duchess of Sussex, the woman married to Prince Harry. And now I'm actually considering using her last name because it actually sounds better with my chosen first names, which are Haley and Nolan. See you next time, and thanks for watching.